Back in February, the Biden administration came up with a new regulation. Their goal was to make it harder for most people crossing the border to qualify for asylum. It's important to know that qualifying for asylum in the United States isn't exactly easy. But here's a breakdown of the step-by-step process. The good news is that Title 42 has officially ended. The first step is you must be from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Ukraine, or Venezuela. It also depends on if you entered Panama or Mexico irregularly. The next step is you will need someone in the U.S. to sponsor you. You also need the necessary resources like money for airfare and a valid passport before you can apply for humanitarian parole. This will let you fly into the U.S. and legally work for a couple of years. But if you're not in this position, your next best option would be to head to Mexico. The third step focuses on securing a safe spot to settle down in Mexico, ideally under the radar of Mexican immigration officials, especially if you don't have the legal right to be there. If you manage to find a safe place and can comfortably make your way to a port of entry on your own, then you're good to go. You're ready to proceed to the next step. However, if finding shelter or traveling freely becomes a challenge, here's the deal. Crossing into the U.S. illegally is not advisable. It can get you in trouble with the law and lead to criminal penalties. Instead, at this point, you have another option. You can choose to request asylum and proceed to the next stage where you'll have a screening interview. Now, for step 4, this step needs you to download an app called CBP One. It's made by U.S. Customs and Border Protection to help people like you book asylum appointments. You'll need to read English, Spanish, or Haitian Creole. And remember, you'll need lots of patience because it might take a while. Now let's jump into step 5. This one's all about reaching the port of entry, but here's the thing. You'll need to make sure there are no U.S. or Mexican officials blocking your access. Once you manage to set foot on U.S. soil, it's time to grab the attention of an officer, speak up, and kindly request asylum. This is your chance to make your case and seek the protection you're looking for. Now, step 6. This involves waiting for an interview with an asylum officer, where you can claim a credible fear of persecution or harm if you return to your home country. The burden of proof lies on you. If you can convince the officer, you may proceed with the normal asylum process. Let's head to step 7. Now, the asylum officer is going to look into whether you've tried to apply for asylum in another country before you came to the U.S. and got turned down. If you didn't try somewhere else first, it's likely that you won't be able to get asylum here. Step 8. The officer is going to figure out if you're eligible for what's called an exemption to the bar to asylum. What does that mean? Well, things like serious medical emergencies, being in immediate extreme danger, or being in a severe trafficking situation could make you eligible. If you can show the officer that any of these situations apply to you, then you could get a shot at the normal asylum process. All right, next up is step 9. The interview is going to keep going, and now the questions are going to be about the tough stuff you've been through in your home country and why you're scared to go back. Just a heads up, they've made the bar a bit higher to pass this part of the interview. But don't worry, if you can meet this new standard, you'll get to stay here in the U.S. and have your case heard by an immigration judge. Step 10. If you fail the interview, you may request a written appeal to a judge or you'll be deported. Now, on to step 11. The judge will take a look at everything you said during the interview and make their own judgment call about your situation. If they're on the same page as the asylum officer, then you're good to continue with the standard asylum process. But if they don't agree, they'll have to decide if you've shown a reasonable fear. And now we're at step 12. At this point, you get the chance to apply for asylum in front of an immigration judge. But just remember, it's not a sure thing. You'll need to put in your asylum application and then, well, it's a bit of a waiting game. It could be as quick as 6 months, but it might also take up to 6 years to get your hearing. And here we go with steps 13 to 15. The judge is going to take another look at your case, checking to see if you fit into an exception to the bar. If you do, and your case is up to the standard, you're granted asylum. If not, you might still have a shot at something called withholding of removal, though that one's a bit tougher to get. If you manage to meet the tougher standard for this and you've got a spouse or kid with you who wouldn't be able to get protection on their own, they'll give you asylum under the idea of family unity. Well, as you can probably tell by now, this whole process is pretty tricky and can be a real test of your patience and your ability to bounce back. Plus, you need to have a solid grasp of U.S. immigration law. The rule we're talking about has gone through a few tweaks since the first draft came out, and we've made sure to update our guide to match. Starting soon, this is the path a lot of folks will have to tread to find safety here in America. Just to make things even more complex, a lot of asylum seekers will find themselves having these interviews over the phone, right from U.S. Customs and Border Protection facilities. They're going to be held to even higher standards, and honestly, it's still a bit of a mystery how they'll get legal help or be able to show any evidence. What's more, these interviews are going to be fast-tracked, thanks to more Department of Homeland Security staff being put on these new screening interviews. These changes to immigration law and policy are pretty significant. And with everything moving at such a breakneck pace, there's a real risk that the whole point of this process, offering protection to people who really need it, might get lost in the shuffle.